So, with Kathleen Finch being put in charge of over 40 networks, and we've already, along with a lot of people, already talked about the potential impact she could have on the future of AEW Dynamite on TBS and AEW Rampage on TNT. We also have to remember that TBS and TNT are not the only networks she's being put in charge of. One of the other popular networks that a lot of people like watching is Cartoon Network, a network that's been around for almost 30 years. And the reason people like watching it is because of the variety of shows that they have. Yes, sometimes they overdo it by backing one show over the amount over the peripheral, easy for me to say, peripheral of others that they have. But still, it's a very popular, very much beloved, and very much viewed network for Warner Media. But now the question is, raised up, I should say. The question now is raised up of what will Kathleen Finch do with CN, with Cartoon Network? Will she keep it as it is, or will she change things? Well, that's a good question to wonder about and speculate. So let's do that and see potentially what could be in store. Now, we know with any changing of the guard that when certain people are put in charge of, networks and everything, like I said, when there's a changing of the guard, and we know that certain people, new people, are put in charge of networks that previous people were put in charge of, we know changes are going to possibly be abound. Sometimes it may not be very significant changes, and sometimes it will be. But when it comes to Cartoon Network, a lot of people have to wonder exactly what would Kathleen Finch have in store for this network. What will her plans be? Her strategy to really make Cartoon Network, be what it used to be, if not more so. And one could look at the fact that she could see how much beloved, Teen Titans Go, easy for me to say, Teen Titans Go is, as far as the network is concerned, and how much the network and the people behind it have been marathoning it almost every weekend, every holiday weekend, every special event weekend or whatever. And she could look at that and say, we're not doing that anymore, we're going to go in another direction. Now, she probably won't say that, Teen Titans Go is going to be removed from the network. No. She might just say, look, you want to get behind Teen Titans Go, that's fine, but we're only going to limit it to a 1 hour block on the weekends and just show it maybe once or twice on the weekdays. And that potentially could happen. Now, if you're a Teen Titans Go fan, is that something that you would, disagree with? Probably. But also, if you're just an overall animation fan, you might look at that and say, hey, this works out great because it gives more opportunity to other animated shows on the network to come out and shine. And that's true too. One show that is very popular with a lot of people is The Amazing World of Gumball. And for all we know, The Amazing World of Gumball might be a show that Kathleen Finch gets behind and says, hey, let's make that the face of our network, and let's get behind that more so than, let's say, Teen Titans, and let's, if we're going to do any kind of marathon, make that the show we go to, but not for so long. Like, maybe her idea of a marathon on the weekdays, holiday weekdays, or whatever, could be just 2 hours, and that's it. Just a 2 hour marathon of the best episodes of Gumball, or best episodes of any show that they might get behind. So she might get behind that, put money behind it, and say, hey, let's make that the face of the network, and let's use that as our primary marathon show during certain special weekends or holiday weekends, and go from there. That could happen. We could look at what was that Creek show or that Lake show, whatever they got going on. She could look at that and say, hey, that could be our next, or that could be our equivalent of Gravity Falls from Disney. let's put money behind that and turn that into our equivalent of Gravity Falls. They could do that. Or she might make that decision. Then again, she might go in a direction that benefits a lot of people. And what I'm talking about is she might say, you know what? Cartoon Network was built on showing cartoons from all eras, the past and the present. And we've gotten away from that, so now let's get back on track with it. And maybe the Cartoon Network we get out of this in the future, when the merger is all said and done, will be a hybrid of showing cartoons from the 60s, the 50s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, even today. Maybe we'll get a block. Maybe we'll get a 4-hour block like, okay, here's one show from the 50s, here's a show from the 60s, that's 1 hour. Here's a show from the 70s, here's a show from the 80s, that's 2 hours. Here's a show from the 90s, here's a show from the 2000s, that's 3 hours. And then here's a couple of shows from today, which is 4 hours. So we might get a 4-hour block to where it ends with back-to-back showings of current shows on the network, but those current shows being preceded by shows from the past. That could happen. That could happen. And they have access now to an unlimited source of entertainment to make that happen. So there's a potential that one day you could sit down on a Monday morning and on a summer vacation, and tune into Cartoon Network, and the first thing you see as part of this 4-hour block is Rough and Ready. Then you might see Space Ghost. Then you might see, Hong Kong Phooey. Then you might see Thundercats. Then you might see SWAT Cats, for all we know. Then you might see Justice League Unlimited. And then you might see some new shows from today. And to me, if that's a direction they would go in, if that Kathleen Finch and her team would go in to, start a new era for Cartoon Network, I think a lot of people will be for it. I really do. And here's another thing too. They have access, or they can get access to a lot of classic animation blocks from other networks. They can. Like, I just did a cartoon flashback episode, first one of this year, on Saturday Superstar Movie. Who's to say they wouldn't be able to gain the rights for that and say, we're going to do a Saturday Superstar Movie revival, and we're going to showcase all these different all these different shows, I should say, or movies that were part of it, all the original classic movies, as well as part of the revival, not only give you an idea with the classic stuff of what you're going to get, but then also bring in some new stuff. That's a possibility too. We don't know. We do know that Cartoon Network, though, in the early mornings lately, I think early or mid-mornings, whatever the time frame is, they have been focusing on entertainment for the younger audience, for the preschoolers and stuff like that. So who's to say she might not be more fond of that? Like, dedicate a whole morning of 7 to 11, a.m. Pacific Eastern Time, or Pacific Eastern Time. You get the idea. Who's to say she might not decide from 7 to 11 it's nothing but educational stuff for pre-K and up, like pre-K to second grade. Who's to say she won't go in that direction? Who's to say she won't go to Netflix, YouTube, and the people that created CoComelon and say, hey, we want to buy the rights to air CoComelon on the network? Who's to say she won't do that? I mean, yeah, CoComelon's on Universal as well, but who's to say she might not want a piece of that pie? It's possible. It is possible. You see what I'm saying, guys? You see what I'm getting at? Kathleen Finch could come up with a lot of different scenarios, a lot of different decisions thanks to her team, because you know she's got a variety of teams doing research for all these networks she's being put in charge of, and giving her the feedback she needs, I should say, to follow through on any ideas that they could, come up with to basically, in their minds, their point of view, improve what is on there right now. But again, it's something we just can only speculate on right now because nothing has happened yet. Nothing has occurred. But the potential is there. The potential is there for a lot of the things that I just mentioned to potentially become a reality. They are. It is there. And as far as Boomerang goes, she sees Boomerang and she probably sees something that's profitable and staying true to what Cartoon Network was. But she might even change that and say, you know what? Boomerang is going to be a streaming service to where you only have shows from the 50s to the early 2000s and that's it. None of this new stuff and all that. You want the Care Bears, you want this, you want that. Guess what? Put it on Cartoon Network. That's where it belongs. Or put it on HBO Max or Discovery Max or HBO Discovery, whatever they're going to call it. That's where it belongs. And that could happen too. That potentially could happen too. So there's a lot of things to speculate and wonder about with Kathleen Finch being put in charge of these things. Now, I know some people are saying, look, we don't have nothing to worry about because as long as they're bringing in the numbers, the viewership, money, and all that revenue, nothing to worry about. That is true. That is a true fact. But it's also a true fact that can get flipped on its head because, like I've said before, when networks have come in or have had a changing of the guard, the new people that come in as part of that changing of the guard, even though a show could have, a huge ratings number and be very viable, financially, doesn't mean they're going to keep it around. Sonic Sat-AM on ABC, even though it was getting beat by Power Rangers, guess what? Still had viable numbers. But what did people at ABC do, the new people that were part of Disney do? Instead of working out something to keep it around, or even suggesting, hey, go look for another network, what did they do? They canceled it because it didn't fit the criteria. WCW, even though it was Turner owned, was still drawing in some big numbers. Yes, they were hemorrhaging money, but they were still bringing in big numbers. What did AOL say? Nope, you don't fit our criteria. Goodbye. So even though people could say that we have nothing to worry about with any of these situations that I've talked about, doesn't mean it's not possible that things could happen in that manner. You just got to pray and hope it doesn't. Again, to me, the most likely scenarios are the ones that I've just mentioned. That either she's going to focus on something like Gumball and say, hey, that's a show I can get behind, and that will be the face of their network, and that'll get somewhat of a similar treatment that Teen Titans Go gets, but not so extensively. She might decide to do a hybrid cartoon block on the weekday mornings and maybe even weekday afternoons of cartoons from the past 60 years, if you will, 6 decades, with a 4-hour block, that block concludes with back-to-back showings of the current shows they have. She could do that. She could bring back the Saturday Superstar movie, revive that, and give people an idea of, hey, this is what you have in store under our belt, but here's what it used to broadcast. Here's some of the stuff that used to be on there. She could do that. She could even, she could even go to Boomerang and say, look, let's take a lot of this stuff that's not classic, like the new Care Bears and stuff like that, put it on the HBO Max service or HBO Discovery, Max Discovery, whatever it's going to be called, and then leave the Boomerang service for just the classic stuff and go from there. I mean, these are things that are very possible, if not likely to happen. But again, just like AEW situation, it's a wait and see and speculation kind of thing right now. You can only wait and see what's going to happen and only speculate as to what will happen in the near future. But what are your thoughts, guys? What are your thoughts on Kathleen Finch and her being in charge of these 40 networks And what do you think her impact will be on Cartoon Network and by extension the Boomerang service? How do you feel about it? What changes do you think potentially could head our way? What shows could be cut down from being so pushed the way they are in favor of maybe others? What are your thoughts? Let me know down below in the comment section as well as in the live chat during the premiere. Like the video, super chats and super stickers are open and would be appreciated during the premiere. Also check me out at BW Rose's Discussion, your favorite audio podcast locations except for Pandora. Also check me out at VENMO at BW Roses for content you can't get anywhere else. Also check me out at deviantart.com/BVW1979. Also check me out at fanfiction.net/Brian.Walmer.1. That's numeral 1. Also, check me out at Patreon at patreon.com at BW Roses to support me with a $1, $3 tier. Also, check me out at Venmo at Brian-Walmer-2 to support me financially there, as well as at Cash App at BW Roses. But again, guys, let me know what your thoughts are. How do you feel about the potential of some of the things I said, probably happening, just speculation-wise, but speculatively probably happening under Kathleen Finch's watch? Do you think anything will happen, at all, or do you think she'll leave things as they are? Let me know down below and in the live chat, and I am out.